Welcome back, Heartland fans. Ty Borden's astonishing return from the presumed dead thrusts Amy Fleming into a maelstrom of raw, conflicting emotions, ranging from profound shock and searing anger to an eventual, hard-won forgiveness as she uncovers the harrowing truth of his lost years and rediscovers the enduring, unbreakable power of their extraordinary love. This chapter explores the deeply raw and complex journey of healing, the ghosts of unspoken grief, and the courageous act of forgiveness. After the initial earth-shattering reveal of Ty Borden's return, the narrative centers on a question that tears at Amy's very soul. Can she truly forgive Ty for the agonizing years of his absence, for the life she believed was stolen from her and their daughter forever? This is a deep, unflinching dive into Amy's heart as she confronts her deepest, most painful wounds and searches for a path towards understanding and perhaps peace with the man she never ever thought she'd see again. The season opens with a serene, almost unsettlingly eerie scene, a deceptive quiet prelude to the emotional storm about to be unleashed upon the Heartland ranch. Amy is found in the familiar, comforting sanctuary of the barn, looking after Spartan, a common ritual for her when she needs to quiet her turbulent thoughts, a ritual that has become more frequent, more desperately necessary in the long, lonely years since Ty's supposed passing. Her mind is a constant, painful whirlwind of images, a relentless replay of cherished, vivid memories of Ty, his laughter, his touch, his quiet strength, each memory sharp and agonizingly clear, a stark, unwelcome contrast to the increasing, undeniable emotional detachment she feels from Nathan, the kind, gentle man who had bravely, if impossibly, tried to fill a void that no one else could ever truly occupy. Her unwavering, fierce affection for Lindy, her bright, resilient, beautiful daughter, is the anchor that has kept her grounded, the one steady light in the overwhelming darkness of her grief. The barn, once a vibrant beacon of unbridled optimism and the sacred, cherished hub of her unique partnership with Ty, now seems to resonate more profoundly than ever with the melancholic, persistent echoes of the past. Each weathered beam and shadowed stall seems to whisper his name, to hold his lingering presence. As she grooms Spartan, her movements practiced, rhythmic and soothing, a shadow flickers almost imperceptibly across the wide barn entrance. Initially, Amy, lost deep in her reverie, shrugs it off as merely a trick of the light, perhaps a stray deer wandering too close, or Jack going about his morning chores. But then a voice she never in her wildest dreams or most terrifying nightmares imagined she would hear again outside the tortured confines of her own mind. A voice that possessed the power to shatter her carefully constructed, fragile piece into a million pieces, and yet simultaneously held the miraculous potential to mend the deepest, most jagged cracks in her very soul, utters her name softly, hesitantly. Amy? Emmy? She stops dead, her hand frozen on Spartan's warm coat, her pulse quickening to a painful, erratic drumming against her ribs as she turns, slowly to face the individual she has yearned for, mourned with every fiber of her being, and yet never, ever truly anticipated seeing again in this lifetime. Ty Borden. His features are undeniably weathered, etched with lines of hardship and suffering she can only begin to imagine, but they are unmistakably, achingly, miraculously his. His eyes, those familiar, deep-set, kind eyes, carry the almost unbearable burden of the years they've been cruelly separated, a profound, haunting sadness mixed with a fragile, desperate, almost pleading hope. For a fleeting yet eternal moment, Amy is utterly paralyzed, her mind struggling, failing to grasp what her heart intrinsically, impossibly, joyfully recognizes. It's Ty. He's alive, and he's present, here in their barn. The reunion is not immediate, not a rush of emotion. Shock, pure, undiluted, and overwhelming, holds Amy captive as Ty takes a hesitant, uncertain step forward, his worn boots echoing hollowly on the familiar wooden floorboards. "It's me," he murmurs, his voice unsteady, thick with unshed tears and years of unspoken words, of unimaginable experiences. "I'm here." Tears well, hot and fast in Amy's eyes, blurring his beloved image, a torrent of suppressed emotion threatening to overwhelm her, to pull her under. "How?" She whispers, her voice trembling, raw with disbelief, with a hope too terrifying to embrace. "How is this possible?" Ty begins to explain, his words tumbling out, painting a picture of a fate almost too cruel, too improbable to comprehend. "They made a mistake, Amy. A mistake, Amy. A terrible, catastrophic misidentification after the crash. Our plane went down during a volunteer veterinary mission in a really remote part of the Peruvian Amazon. He was with a small ecological survey team. While I was declared deceased based on recovered effects someone else must have had, I was actually found by an uncontacted indigenous tribe. Days later, barely alive. I had critical injuries, a severe head trauma, a tropical fever that nearly killed me, internal bleeding. I was unconscious for weeks, maybe longer. They don't measure time like we do. He struggles for a moment, the memories clearly agonizing. When I finally woke up, I couldn't speak, couldn't move much at all. I had amnesia for a long time. The people of the tribe, they were surprisingly kind. They saved my life, nursed me with remedies I'd never seen. But they had no real way of knowing who I was and no contact with the outside world. My ID, my pack, everything that could identify me was lost in the wreckage, likely confused with another victim who didn't make it. He pauses, his gaze filled with the remembered horror and isolation of it. By the time my memory started to fully return in fragmented pieces, and I regained some physical strength and the ability to communicate, however crudely, so much time had passed. Trying to get word out, to find help, to even figure out where I was and how to get back to civilization. It was a slow, agonizing, terrifying process. There were so many dead ends, so many false hopes, so many moments I nearly gave up, Amy. So many times I thought I'd die there, alone. The narrative is both profoundly agonizing in its detail and utterly astounding in its implications. A story of survival against truly impossible odds, but also a story of profound, tragic failure on the part of those who so quickly, so definitively declared him dead. As Amy absorbs it, her mind reeling, the initial shock, the incredulous joy begins to give way to a turbulent maelstrom of conflicting, powerful emotions. Relief, yes, an overwhelming, dizzying, almost unbearable relief that he is alive, that this impossible miracle is real. But beneath that fragile surface, a darker, more turbulent current begins to stir. Anger. A deep, burning anger at the circumstances, at the unfairness of it all. Anger at the world for its casual cruelty, and a confusing, painful, almost shameful anger directed, perhaps unfairly, perhaps not, towards Ty himself. Why him? Why them? Why did their family have to endure this? And why, oh why, did it take so agonizingly long for him to find his way back? Each glance at Ty, at this ghost made flesh, unleashes a fresh torrent of memories, sharp and bittersweet. Recollections of their incandescent love, their shared laughter, their whispered dreams, their conquered trials, and the beautiful, precious life they had built together, with Lindy at its heart before it was so cruelly, so inexplicably snatched away. However, life, as Amy knew too well, is no longer that straightforward. Time, relentless and uncaring, has marched on, carving new paths, new realities. Amy's heart, though still bearing the deep, jagged, unhealed scars of Ty's loss, has spent the recent desolate years attempting to mend, to piece itself back together, primarily for Lindy's sake, but also for her own survival. That painful, arduous mending process had, in its own quiet way, involved Nathan, the steadfast, kind veterinarian who had offered her quiet, unwavering support, gentle, undemanding companionship, and a semblance of fragile normalcy when Amy was at her most vulnerable, Curti, lost in the vast wilderness of her grief. Although their connection never, not for a moment, reached the profound, soul-deep, almost telepathic depths of what she shared with Ty, Amy understands with a clarity that chills her that she owes Nathan honesty, a conversation that now feels impossibly, excruciatingly difficult. But how does one even begin to articulate the return of a man from the dead, the resurrection of a love she had buried alongside him? As Ty observes her struggling for words, her intense internal conflict written plainly, painfully on her face, he gently rests a hand on her shoulder, a touch that sends shivers of devastating familiarity and fresh, acute pain coursing through her. "You don't have to explain anything right now," he says, his voice soft, deeply understanding. But Amy slowly shakes her head, a small, almost imperceptible movement. She recognizes this moment, as surreal and overwhelming as it feels, is one she cannot evade, cannot postpone. The questions storming within her are a raging, uncontainable inferno. The subsequent scene shifts, finding Amy later that same day, after the initial, almost unbelievable shock has been shared with a stunned, disbelieving Jack and Lisa. She has asked Ty to give her some space, some time. Needing to breathe, to think, to try and make sense of the impossible, she finds herself walking the familiar fields of Heartland, the vast, open expanse, usually a source of profound comfort, now feeling like it mirrors the crushing emptiness, the raw void she's carried within her for so long. The anger is a bitter, acrid taste in her mouth. He was alive, alive all those countless nights she cried herself to sleep, her pillow soaked with tears. Alive through all those precious milestones Lindy reached without her father there to see them. Alive through all those desolate moments she felt like she couldn't possibly go on when the weight of her grief was a physical burden too heavy to bear. The thought is a fresh, vicious stab of pain. How could the world be so cruel, so capricious to give him back now? Yet in doing so, to have taken so much so irrevocably in the interim. She remembers a particularly bleak, terrifying period during the first winter after his supposed death. Spartan had been critically ill, a strange, aggressive infection that baffled the local vets. Amy had felt utterly alone, desperate, calling on every ounce of her knowledge, but acutely aware of the gaps only Ty's specific experience could have filled. She'd spent nights in the barn with Spartan, whispering Ty's name, begging for his guidance, his strength, a phantom presence she clung to. He hadn't been there. He was, as she now knows, fighting his own desperate battles for survival, lost in a world away. But the stark, painful reality of her profound solitude during those terrifying moments, her helplessness, fuels her current, simmering resentment. Lou finds her by the river, a place that holds so many memories of Ty. Her sister's presence is a silent, unwavering offering of support, an understanding that needs no words. He told us what happened, Lou says gently, her voice full of compassion, sitting beside Amy on a fallen log that has been their confidant many times. Amy, it's almost unbelievable what he went through. It's a miracle he's even here. Amy nods, fresh tears pricking her eyes again. But these are different tears, hotter, angrier. You know, Amy says, her voice tight, strained with suppressed emotion. A part of me is so incredibly, unbelievably happy, Lou. So relieved I can barely breathe. But another part is just furious. I'm furious that he's been gone this long. Furious at everything we've lost, everything that's been stolen from us. Lindy, oh God, Lou, Lindy barely remembers him as a real person. She knows him from photographs, from my stories, from the way my voice breaks when I talk about him too much. He's a myth to her, a legend, not a father. And Nathan, oh, Nathan. Lou puts a comforting arm around her trembling shoulders. Nathan will understand, honey. He's a good man, a kind man. And Ty, Amy, from what he said, from what Jack pieced together, he did everything humanly possible. He never ever stopped trying to get back to you, to Lindy. But is that enough, Lou? Amy whispers, the question hanging heavy, unanswered in the still air. Is it enough to erase all this pain, all these years of aching loss? The conversation with Nathan is inevitable, a looming dread that has settled in the pit of her stomach. Yeah, Amy finally approaches him later that evening. The unspoken tension is a palpable thing, a thick, suffocating blanket in the air. Nathan, with his quiet, unassuming perceptiveness, cannot quite decipher the source of her profound distress, but he clearly immediately senses it. Hey, he greets her, his voice holding its usual composed, gentle demeanor, though his eyes search hers with a flicker of open concern. You look like you've seen a ghost. Amy hesitates, her breath catching in her throat, before finally taking a seat across from him at the familiar kitchen table, her voice trembling almost uncontrollably as she says, Nathan, there's something I need to tell you. Something, and I don't know how to say it. There are no right words. Initially, Nathan naturally assumes it's another difficult discussion about their strained, faltering relationship, the unspoken, mutual understanding that something has felt fundamentally off between them for a while now. He's ready to reassure her, to listen, to pledge to do better, to try harder. But then Amy delivers the staggering, world-altering news. Tai is back. Her voice is barely a whisper. He's alive. The words strike Nathan with brutal force of a physical blow. His first reaction is utter, stunned disbelief, then a flicker of deep confusion, then a slow, dawning, agonizing pain. How? How could this possibly be? Amy recounts Ty's harrowing story, her voice flat, almost robotic, emotionally exhausted from the day's impossible revelations. As she speaks, she sees the fragile hope that had once flickered in Nathan's eyes when he looked at her slowly, cruelly extinguish, replaced by a quiet, profound resignation. The tension culminates when Nathan says, his voice gentle but laced with an inescapable, heartbreaking sorrow, I've tried to be there for you, Amy. For you and for Lindy, I've tried so hard to fill that enormous void Ty left behind. But I was never enough, was I? Not really. Amy's eyes fill with tears, and she whispers, her voice breaking with the devastating truth of it. Oh, Nathan, it's not about being enough. Please, you have to know that. You are more than enough. You're kind and good and decent, and I care about you so deeply. But it's about the fact that my heart was never truly mine to give again after Ty. I thought it could be. I truly hoped it could be for both our sakes. But him being back, it changes everything. It changes me. It changes me. As Nathan walks away, accepting her devastating words with a quiet grace that makes Amy's heart ache even more profoundly, the full gravity of her internal, unspoken choice descends upon her with crushing weight. She has, in essence, already chosen Ty, even before consciously, fully admitting it to herself. Nathan was her stability, her gentle, safe harbor in the relentless storm of her grief. But Ty has always been her soulmate, the other, essential half of her. Yet, acknowledging this profound truth doesn't magically erase the deep-seated anger, the profound hurt, the gaping wound of Ty's years of absence. Forgiveness feels like a distant, unreachable shore. The scene transitions back to Heartland's iconic barn, now late into the night. Amy finds Ty there, much like she herself was that very morning, as if the day has come full, painful circle. He's standing by Spartan's stall, his silhouette framed by the soft, ethereal moonlight filtering through the high window. The silence between them is laden with unspoken words, a universe of complex, tangled emotions too intricate, too raw to articulate easily. Ty's eyes are filled with both a deep yearning longing and a profound, palpable uncertainty, while Amy's expression is a complex, shifting tapestry of disbelief, raw, untamed emotion, and a simmering, bitter resentment she can no longer fully contain. Finally, it is Ty who breaks the silence, his voice carrying a vulnerability Amy hasn't heard in years, not since their earliest, most fragile, tentative days together. I don't even know where to begin, Amy. How to try and